She's an international speaker, fashion and lifestyle model, and children's book author. She's also the producer of the upcoming documentary, Project Building Hope. She's also the founder and executive director of a nonprofit committed to leaning into the simple good in us all to empower youth to become positive activists through art and discussion. And last year, Crain Chicago Business named her one of its notable leaders in community development. Please join me in the very definition of multi-hyphenate talent and passion, Priya Shah, in the arena right now.
3, 2, 1. Here we go!
Priya Shah. Hello.
Hello.
You and I have not known each other long, but we have built a show together, a special. We'll get to all of that. And I think sometimes you meet folks and you know that you sense something. I mean, I think we're energy and we sense things, and I sense that about you. But we'll get to all of that. But let's get everyone up to speed. So let's go back to the beginning, shall we?
Okay.
When and where were you born?
I was born in Chicago, and I found out it was called Lady of Resurrection Hospital. I know.
That was her action item from our pre-interview. Okay, Lady of Resurrection?
Yeah,
Wonderful.
close to Rogers Park, but it's no longer there.
Okay, well, as often is the case, things change. Tell me about the man and woman who created you.
Two very unique individuals. They came from two different parts of the world, even though we're all Indian.
Okay.
So my dad was born and raised in India right after independence, British independence had broke from India. And my mom grew up in East Africa in Uganda. And 20 years after British left India, British left Uganda. And so both my parents went through the impact of British colonization, but in a little bit of a different way, right? So, and they ended up migrating here.
Wow. You have one sibling that is your brother.
Yes.
He is 2.5 years younger. What was your relationship? What was it like growing up?
We definitely, my parents worked really hard, so they're gone a lot, and so we entertained ourselves.
Were you a good older sister?
I was a good older sister. Still feel like he's my little baby,
Which takes me to my next question. Describe your relationship now. If I were to ask him, does your big sister sometime act like she's your mother? Would he answer yes?
Yes.
Okay, fair enough.
But then he got taller than me, and we thought tables were going to turn, but they did not. So.
Let me tell you something. It's funny that you say that. My mom, we asked her a question. My late brother and I were both above 6 feet because my late father was. And I said, why are we so afraid of you? She said, I was very strategic. I knew I had a certain amount of time before puberty hit to instill a certain, and she did her job, because right now my mom is about 80, but when I'm with her, I don't know what it is, but I feel safest. I know I'm bigger, taller, but something about that. But she literally was very strategic. I think I got my strategic thinking from her. You graduated from Oak Park River Forest High School in early 2000.
Yeah.
And U of I Champaign in mid 2000. Let's do that. If I asked you in 2005, what you'd be doing professionally in 2023, what would you have told me?
Man, I thought that I was going to be like you're doing right now, a broadcasting journalist.
Well, let's swap seats.
Yeah, I really loved telling stories. I've always been fascinated about people, and always wanted to uplift voices, and I used to be a writer as well. I loved writing poetry and just writing in general. So yeah, I thought that was what I was going to be doing. And I kind of, traveled the world, and I saw different ways that I could actually do it through a lot of my strengths, and it just kind of broadened my scope of what else I could do.
You are young and talented, and I will say this to you as someone who received my degree at University of Michigan in communication, worked in television, radio, then moved away from it. And now here I am, about to turn 55. So
Back in it, yeah.
So I never say never. And when you said you were a writer, I suspect from just the way you tell a narrative, you're a writer. There's no used to be. You're a writer.
Thank you.
But you're also, like me, we have something else in common, so much in common.
Yeah.
You're a model.
Yes.
Tell me this. So tell me this, community activist and servant leader, how did you find your way into modeling? Because I know it must have been something like deeply rooted, intentional, direct. What was it?
How did you know that?
What happened? How did you become a model?
Well, I think the reason why I agreed to model, it was a very serendipitous moment where I was at a charity event and my agent scouted me, and this opportunity became in front of me.
I go to charity events. No one scouted me, so let's take a step back. What did that? And I do. This is interesting because you hear a lot of models, and even from supermodels, you hear that story that people have an eye. Because modeling isn't just being good looking; it's more than that. So, what, if you can recall, did that agent, when they were pitching you about being a model, what did they say? What was the pitch?
He just really was impressed by how I carried myself, and there were, I think, some, like you said, outside of looks, some other energies and traits that he thought would be really powerful. And for me, it was actually an opportunity for me to elevate somebody that looks like me, that's not seen or really accepted in society, to create an example of how this can be accepted. There's not many women of color that are brown, that are born with one hand, that are models, right? And there's a lot of shame for an identity like mine. And to be offered an opportunity where it's not shamed and something that they want to celebrate, I thought that this would be such an amazing thing, because when I was younger, I never saw anybody that looked like me, and I wish I did, so that I could have a bit more empowerment about who I was and how I could be accepted. And so that's what I hope to achieve through my modeling, and I've already felt it. I've met.
How does that feel? You just said it, representation. You hear it so often, but when you really sit with it, my goodness, it matters. Seeing yourself, seeing images of yourself. So when you think right now, being that young girl that did not have that, and think about what you are right now for young girls and young boys, and for non-binary folks who are finding their way and their voice, do you ever stop and go, wow, that's heady?
Yeah, it really truly feels like a blessing on your back, and it's something that I'm so grateful for, and I'm doing it for that reason. It's just really to, if I was a kid that saw somebody that looked like me, I feel like I wouldn't have gone through a lot of the thoughts that I did have.
Agreed.
And to be able to bring that to other children and people in general is just such a gift.
Look at you being, and that is one of the things. We'll talk again more about it. When we first met, you were a guest on a show here, and I was sitting in the audience, and I was sitting in the studio with a guest from Los Angeles, and we were watching. And I was like, just what your agent just said. There is a poise and a confidence and a self-directedness and a fearlessness, and that is. Do not underscore the power of that, because that allows you, which is why I was able to hear your words as you were talking in that interview about the caste system, because there was a passion there, but there was a presence. So I'm going to move on to the simple good. What motivated you to start that nonprofit now 10 years ago?
Oh man, that's a life journey.
Let's talk about it. Until Louis, our floor manager, gives us a cut. Let's go.
It was really inspired by my travels. I grew up as an artist. I was a visual artist. Like I mentioned, writing and poetry really influenced my visual art. And I had really unique opportunities at a young age to travel internationally and not only learn and study, but also do volunteer work. And some of my most prominent experiences were in India. I worked at Mother Teresa's orphanage. I was in slums in South Africa.
Oh, wow.
I was in Brazil. I was in Turkey. A lot of different places that seem very different, but actually I found a lot of connections to every place I was in, and I really found a commonality between all the places that I was living in. And what that really taught me was what it means to learn and teach resilience. A lot of the challenges that we see here in America actually exist everywhere, and there are so many incredible human beings that know how to overcome and fight for all. And I was really inspired by how I was able to connect to all of these spaces, and it was truly through that underlying small notion of good in our lives. You know, wherever I went, I realized that we all cry about the same things, we all worry about the same things, but at the end of the day, good is really the same to all of us, and that's what connects us as human beings. And that really empowered me to understand how to overcome my own challenges that I was dealing with at that time. You know, I was oppressed in so many different levels.
Sure.
Being a woman, being a brown woman, being a brown woman with one
Tick
hand.
off the list.
Like, it's coming from all angles, you know? And as a child, you're not really taught how to overcome those
You don't have
doubts.
the tools.
No. And it was really me finding what was the simple good about me? What was that good that was within me that I can use to not only better myself, but also better the world? And those are inherent powers that we're all born with. And once I realized that, hey, I'm an artist, I can create things that can bring joy and happiness to other people. And if that's the small thing I can do, then I shall do it. And that's what really led me into this trajectory of like finding who I was and realizing that all children need to be taught what they are instead of what they aren't. And that's what's really going to move us towards our possibility.
Oh, that's powerful. You know, I've been having conversations a lot recently about glass half full versus half empty, and how we can be, two people who can be saying sort of the same things and attach different meanings to it. And you said something that struck me, and I think I audibly, in order for us to see the simple good in others, we must first see it in ourselves. And that was a powerful statement. So that's a wonderful foundation, but running a nonprofit, what lessons, biggest opportunities, biggest surprise, or anything else in that vein have you learned in the past 10 years running? Oh, your eyes just gave. Okay, take your time with that as well. Okay.
Well, I just did a 10-year reflection post on 10 lessons learned from 10 years of founding a nonprofit, and I probably had 25 lessons learned. So. But I think what's interesting is that a lot of people don't understand what a nonprofit really even is.
Agreed.
What it really means to do community work, what it means to serve others. You know, there's a lot of stigmas and assumptions about what this work is, and there's a lot of people that do go into it for the wrong reasons. But those that do it right are the ones that really need to be examined and celebrated, because there's so many amazing people on this earth that are really dedicating their lives to uplift all of us, and we all benefit from that.
Absolutely.
And I don't think we celebrate that enough. And I was actually pretty shocked to come into this space and realize that this doing work for others is actually, it was doubted, you know. And I was in the Middle East before the pandemic, and I've met so many profound leaders, and I met this one woman that was doing amazing work serving youth there, and she told me, which I've always remembered, is that, you know, when you're doing good work to help others, people always doubt you and try to believe it's not true. And I said, so then what do you do in that case? And she said, to ignore them. And so that's my lesson, is just ignore those naysayers.
You know, it's interesting. You and I have talked, we've pre-interviewed, we've plotted out live town hall meetings that we'll talk about in a minute. I've been listening to, one of my favorite artists is a gospel artist named Yolanda Adams. And Yolanda, I forgot how much I loved the song until it showed up in somebody's TikTok. And it's got a line in there where she got her power when everyone around her wants to doubt. And so much of what you're saying is just resonating with me. And that you have to put, for young people, we assume, you know, I'm 55 soon, 54 now.
Happy early birthday.
I've taken this from my mom. I always add an extra year as soon as I turn an age. Thank you, early. But I think now, the things that I worried about, the things that mattered, I just said literally to someone today, I don't know if I want my youth back, even though that would have given me back my good knees, because it was so much harder than it had to be, which is part of the work I think we're doing while we're connecting. I don't want someone, if their dream from their birth, like mine was to work in television, to have to take a long way around, unless they choose to find their voice, to find their posse, to find their agency. And we make so many assumptions that, oh, you know that. Why? If I don't have exposure to it, how do I know that? I'm a young person trying to find my way, and this is a lot of stimulation coming in, but no one's really sitting down going, you are powerful. There's power to that. You have choice. You have agency. You get to make mistakes. What other people think about you does not matter. You know, we, especially young, we take on the things we're told. So when I worked in education, I understood the power of saying if you say to a young person, you are capable of anything, they believe you. If you say to a young person, what other people think of you consistently doesn't matter, that's where that strength and that inner resource gets developed.
Yeah.
All right, enough about me. When all is said and done, Priya Shah, what would you like, and it's a two-parter, what would you hope, or what are you working to ensure that your legacy is as leader of the Simple Good and the organization itself?
Great question.
Thank you so much.
I love it. That's a wonderful question. So many
You're
things.
very supportive. Go on. Back to you.
I think what I hope to establish and shift is really understanding the development of institutional empathy. We really need to build and understand compassion and empathy from the day that we're born, and really integrate that into all the institutions that we're a part of, especially education. In education, we're really taught skills, and removing art and social emotional learning and mindfulness and the education of teaching who we are as a human being is not something that we really emphasize.
Yeah.
And teaching a whole human being is really what's going to allow us to be more productive and move towards our possibility. Because only when we truly have purpose do we move in the direction that's safe for everybody. And I think that we're never taught who we are in education. That's the whole point of what it means to educate a child. And so I hope that through our program, we can demonstrate how this is actually possible and how it needs to be available everywhere around the world, not just Chicago.
Brilliant. That was a great answer. So back to how we met. On a show, a program here called Change Agents that is hosted by my friend, my colleague, one of my bosses because he's on the board of directors of Can TV, and my brother from another mother, Sufyan Soho. You were here, sitting right there, and I'm in the studio. A dear friend who is a PR pro from LA was in town and wanted to see what we were up to. And we sat here, and I was at the time reading Cass by Isabel Wilkerson. And you sat in this seat, and Toni Puri is her name. She and I were sitting here, and you started speaking truth to power, talking about experiences. And so often we are so precious about these conversations. And the way you dug in and went, well, it's this, and I understand this, and this is what we know. Here are the similarities, and all of those things. And when it was over, she and I both, we were afraid we were going to destroy the taping because we were over there having church going, yes, oh my goodness, it's yes, the cat, yes, we have similarities. And then you and Pushkar, who was on the show as well, talking about the similarities between what our leaders, Dr. King and Mahatma Gandhi, stood for. And then after that conversation, when we applauded you all and destroyed the tape, we stood out in the hall having a conversation. And that conversation that happened in December, what the result of that conversation is, or at least one of them, was the King Gandhi Town Hall that just aired, and you were a panelist for, speaking more truth to power on this very network. So tell me, in our final few minutes together, what do you hope to, what would you like to see happen between the Indian and the African American communities?
I think what I'd like for us to understand is kind of the similar patterns that we've both have been fighting for, and recognizing that history is very critical so that we don't place the same caste system upon ourselves by each other. That is really what happens when you're under a habit of infrastructure of identity, where one is above the other, and you kind of keep on moving in that direction and that cycle unless you realize where that even comes from. And what I have been really noticing is a time where a lot of people of color are moving up into different areas of power. Are we actually operating differently, or are we being white adjacent? And so the only way that we can create change and equality and fairness for all of us is that we don't repeat these same cycles. And I think it's really important for communities like ours that have had such a deep history for fighting for freedom and being ourselves, that we understand how that freedom was even needed in the first place.
Conscious consideration and intention. Priya Shah, I knew it. We're not done yet. We are going to come back. I thank you. You are so wonderful. We're going to come back and have 3 questions, our final segment called 3 for the Road. So brace yourself.
Oh, man.
All right, we'll be right back. Stay with us.
The players, the politics, the problems, and the people. Political Forum offers local legislators and political newsmakers an opportunity to participate in a one-on-one interview to discuss the most important political headlines in Chicago. Join us for Political Forum Wednesday at 7 p.m. on KNTV 19 and streaming at knTV.org. The world is watching Chicago. Chicago is watching Political Forum.
Priya Shah. We are back for the final segment. We're heading the curve toward the finish.
Yes.
I'm going to, in this segment called 3 for the Road, I'm going to ask you 3 questions. You're going to give me 3 answers.
Got it. Okay.
You ready to begin?
Ready.
Let's get it started. If you could have dinner with one person, living or dead, who would it be and why?
Trevor Noah.
Why? That just didn't. Well,
That was it. I just feel like he's my friend already. We should be best
He a
friends.
friend in your head?
Yeah, no.
Okay.
I lived in South Africa, resonate with his story, and I just think he's so brilliant with not only how his comedy is, but it really incorporates the world.
Yeah.
And I think that I do that through our work too, with really thinking about all of the challenges that we face and talk about through a global lens and not just an American lens. So,
Love it.
yeah.
Okay. Great first answer. You feel good about it?
Yeah.
Let's keep on. Do you have any regrets?
No, because you learn from all of them.
Okay. Final answer there?
Yeah.
Perfect. Final question. One piece of advice present-day Priya would have given her 21-year-old self.
Keep going.
Okay. You're like, that's it.
Well, I was trying to, I think when we're early 20s, we don't really, I think we can self-doubt ourselves
Sure.
and not really believe in the inherent strengths that everybody else really sees. And so things can impact us a little more strongly than in the large scope of things. They're really meant to teach us. We don't realize what they're actually meant to teach us. So I think that's what I would have said.
I'm going to take the liberty, because counting's not my thing, so this might be your 4th question. But here's something I'd like to ask you. Who is Deshaun, and what does this shirt I'm wearing have to do with Deshaun?
Deshaun is one of our students. He goes to Finger High School in Roseland, yes, which is on Chicago's South Side. And he inspired that T-shirt through his meaning of the simple good. So he created a body of artwork. At his final showcase, he said, "My simple good is equality." And he was really talking about how sometimes we misjudge people and create stereotypes, and we're not actually born with those assumptions or stereotypes, but we're taught them. And we should really think about how we need to be equal and fair to everybody. And his words are so profound and thoughtful. So every year we pick 5 students across all of our programs in Chicago whose profound words that we celebrate on quote tees. And we sell these tees to really support funding our program. programs. So it's really through our students' voices that we're uplifting their words even further through fashion.
How wonderful. Tell Deshaun I say he is talented, he is going to be amazing and creative, and I believe in the power of artistic expression, especially, you said it, growing up in Detroit, I was a kid with a lisp and stutter, and art wasn't a luxury. Art was in some ways my bridge to strengthening my skills of empathy and seeing a world outside of the four corners of my east side neighborhood that was transitioning from middle down to transient. So art and expression and the power of art and expression to help people, to give people not only voice, but an opportunity to express their trauma and to deal with that trauma is so powerful. So that's why I love this so much, and tell Deshaun I think it is brilliant and wonderful. And I know that we are going to be doing more things together because we just have to. But bravo to you.
Thank you.
I thank you sincerely for taking this journey, for letting me chase you down the hall back in December and go.
Thanks for chasing me.
Let's have, because these are important conversations, and I believe representation matters. And I believe I've said this often, we're in the dash moment. So when we see others who believe that empathy and equality and compassion and the simple good in all of us has value, we want to get as many of us in the arena and push this forward.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, my friend.
Thank you.
Thank you as well, Chicago and beyond. Let me leave you with a final thought for the road, courtesy of spiritual entrepreneur Mir Ezra. The only way to help people is to see the good in them. Until next time, take good care of you and each other. Good night. Chaos.
That was such a good follow-up after the Simple Good t-shirt story. Oh my God, wrapped it up so nicely. Oh
It's organic. The power of organic conversation and connection. And I told you, about how I met that gentleman who, if it wasn't for that, words that connected us, words or things or images that